Hi, we're about to start looking at top tips for that year-end frenzy with our expert panel of IFOL tutors, but just while everybody's joining us, they're just joining us now. If you'd like to say hi and introduce yourself in the chat room, we can see where you are. And thanks for taking the time out to join us at this busy time of year. We hope to have some top tips and some things that you can do to make the end of the year a little bit less stressful. Yes, some people are joining us now, and I think we'll be good to go in just a moment or two. So, welcome to this webinar where the IFOL Education panel will be discussing how to approach the year end. Try and avoid the panic with some key tips and strategies to get the work done with as little stress as possible. And as you can see from their appearance, maybe a smile or two along the way. I'm the serious one today. For those who aren't members or students with us already, the panel is made up of some of our experts who deliver live virtual masterclasses each month for members and students. We will be providing you with a guide following the session, so no need to make too many notes. And please put any questions you have in the chat and we'll pick them up. And we'll also be running a couple of polls and we would ask you to vote in those. I'm Sue Beardsmore and I'm joined today by Caroline Adams, Debra Richardson and Garry Stevens, and between them they have over 75 years experience in the finance field, and that's an awful lot of year end. So Caroline Adams has over 20 years experience in shared services as a senior finance manager and in IT. She's built and led teams through development and change and knows all about the challenges of year end. Debra Richardson has over 20 years experience in AP, AR and in Fortune 500 companies. And she is a specialist in ledger financial reporting for the Fortune 500, and she has got significant experience in reporting requirements and compliance for year's end, which is clearly important. Garry Stevens has been involved in finance in the private and public sector for over 40 years, and of course there is that difference, private-public. He transformed the accounts payable team at Aberdeen City Council and now works with organisations to strengthen AP teams and overall performance. So welcome everybody, it's good to have you here today. Hi. Now then, before we go any further and hear their top tips and strategies, a quick poll for you if you wouldn't mind joining in. Do you have a year-end plan in place now? It's just a single choice, yes, no, or you're working on it. And you can be quite honest. It's pretty anonymous, but if you could tell us how you're looking at the year end as we speak today, that would be a really good thing to have a look. So click in your votes and we'll see how we get on with that in a moment or two. So do you have a year end plan in place?
Yeah.
Yes. So there's nobody that hasn't thought about it. So that's very encouraging for everybody. Most people have a plan and the rest are working on it. So Caroline, with that in mind, can we start off with you just to kick off this particular question? What should a year-end plan actually look like?
Interesting question, Sue. What we've learned from experience is going back as far out as possible. So the earlier, the better. 8 weeks, 12 weeks, whether it's half year end or preparing for year end, is about thinking about putting your plan in place. And what should be on that plan is individual to every company. But I'm just going to go through some of the things that we used to have on ours. And one of the most important things was to ensure that everybody in the AP team knows what they're doing first. And by that, I mean, if you've got new starters or someone who hasn't been through it previously, sit down and talk them through what an AP year end looks like. The second thing that I always do is ensure that I talk to teeth and mouth this afternoon, talk to IT and ensure that the IT support team know when the critical dates are and that they've got people in place in case anything goes wrong, and you've got a go-to nominated person for any incidents. And then we create a task list of events and meetings, and the communications go on that year-end calendar as well. And then we use it as a working document at our team meetings as a tick list, if you like, to make sure what tasks have been nominated to who and the deadlines associated with it, and are we on track and are we on plan. And then the biggest thing about year end is about communication. So communication to all stakeholders, maybe suppliers, but not so much so. But definitely internal procurement and out to the wider business. And then it's about seeing if you can simplify tasks in that critical period and leave the less important tasks if they're not associated with year end. And then finally, it's about the team and making sure that the team are okay, that they've got a manageable workload, that no one team is overladen with tasks, and ensuring that you're using your diaries for chasing, for reminders, just using your calendars that you've got on your computer. And in that way, it automatically prompts you rather than using a file or a piece of paper. So yeah, I think that's, for me at a high level, that's it really.
Okay. Deborah, would you like to come in there at all about what a plan should actually look like at year end from your perspective?
Yeah, and I really have three different areas. So the first one is staffing, right? So if you know that, well, actually, we all know that we have increased invoices at year end. Those invoices that have been sitting on desks all year round, all of a sudden come out of the woodwork. And so make sure you have a plan for staffing, whether that looks like bringing in contractors or making sure that you have adequate staffing levels, pre-approval for from management for overtime. You may want to implement some quotas. So that's one for staffing. And then for vendor setups, so plan for those urgent vendor setups. All those invoices I just said that are coming in from desks that have been sitting there all year long. Some of them will not have vendors. And so you're going to have someone that's going to needs to be assigned to handle all of those urgent vendor setups. And so in that way, you can make sure that you're setting those vendors up on a focus level without having to have it spread around and then perhaps not end up not having that vendor set up in an efficient timeline in order to get that invoice posted for year end. And then that also kind of protects you because you have someone focused on it. So you won't be tempted to set up a vendor without all of the validations and internal controls that if you did do that, it would make you or increase your potential for fraud. And then the last thing is, just like Carolyn said, communication is key. And I've seen, we've all seen those communications come out from finance, accounting, from AP with all of the due dates or the deadlines for invoices, but also include, the deadlines for getting new vendors set up, because you'll have lots of folks that'll come. A lot of your internal team members will want to get things purchased by the end of the year. And so they need reminders that it's just not going to be set up without your normal process, and just kind of remind them of that and some deadlines for getting those invoices in to ensure those vendors are set up properly as well. So staffing, plan for urgent vendor setups, and then communication to the internal team members.
And it sounds a little as though you're saying kind of clear the decks and sort yourself out, so the extra pressure doesn't make you go into extra problems really and not do things correctly in other directions.
Correct. Plan for it. Plan for that increased workload now.
Okay, Garry, do you have anything to add to
Not really. I mean, before we started a discussion, I put 3 keywords down, which were plan, communicate, and review, and I think we've covered all of those definitely in detail. I was never a Boy Scout, but I think the motto is be prepared, and I think that's a key thing that you need to be prepared.
When you're doing all this planning, all of you, at the end of the year, and when the year end comes around, have you, in your experiences, ever come across, you know, big surprises that you're not expecting? What are the things that people should look out for that could derail them?
Usually something that they have planned and not communicated. So it could be a late request to make a pay run after you've cut off or done something, or it could be a huge batch of invoices that are a material value that, like Deborah said, have been stuck in someone's drawer somewhere, and they suddenly appear, and it's a surprise to all, not just us. And it's about catering for those surprises, and usually something will happen, and not let it be a surprise. Well, it's always going to be a surprise, but learn to manage those types of surprises.
One of the things, a little tip that we did for procurement side of things, was to try to cut down on the volume of invoices that are hitting you at year end. Was about 6 weeks before year end date, we put out a message to stop all non-essential purchasing. So that would then cut down on the volume of invoices that we were getting into the team, and also reduce the risk of any surprises coming through with high value invoices you maybe weren't expecting. So only essentials purchasing up from the last 6 weeks onwards, and that did help us to reduce the number of purchase orders and subsequently the number of invoices that were coming in.
Deborah, anything come across?
Yeah, so to help with the staffing levels at year end, actually right after Thanksgiving, we went into sort of a blackout period for for non-essential days off. So we would really look at requests for, you know, vacation, not necessarily sick time, or if an employee needed to be off, but we really discouraged vacations during that year-end period. Now, I don't know how that will work in a post-COVID era, but in a pre-COVID era, it worked pretty well to make sure that we had staffing levels, and employees, our team members expected that. But of course, if someone needed to be off, they needed to be off, but we really discouraged that throughout the blackout period.
I guess one of the things to look at the moment, as we're still dealing with COVID and people working at home, is to not have new team members without a proper induction just because you're under pressure and you're not in the same circumstances. Maybe something to look out for.
So there's also certain sectors in the UK who, I won't use the word forced, but are it's suggested that they take 2 weeks off at Christmas as well. And that can create issues for companies who have got year end at that time of year on how you manage those situations, because finance have to come in.
Right. You all mentioned comms. What are your top tips for good comms? Because it's easy to say, you know, communications are the key, but how do you drive those internal comms?
Well, in my experience, we worked in a large local authority. We had 6 directorates. We had about 17,000 staff across a number of locations. So obviously communication is really, really important. And within our local authority, it was the accountancy teams that drove the year-end process. So they were the ones that were keeping you in touch. They would give you the details of the plan, the key dates that everybody needed to work to, and there was regular reviews throughout the year. I mean, we did a month end every month, so those are like little mini year ends, if you like. So you can actually get an overview as you work through the month how things are looking, and if there's anything that might be looking as if it's going to be unexpected, you've hopefully got time within a few months before year end to do something about it. So there was accountancy staff assigned to every directorate and budget holders. So that message was always getting pushed through from the accountancy teams. I've got my teeth in the wrong way today as well. The accountancy teams, to make sure that the staff were aware of what was required within the certain periods and the dates, etc.
Okay, so Deborah, sorry.
So we use the CFO and use the board and drove the comms from the top down through similar to what Gary's saying, through the different divisions, the different areas. So whether it be retail, marketing, whichever team it was, so that everybody got the same message and knew what had to be delivered and when. So nobody could say that they didn't know about it and hadn't been briefed. And we found that to be the most effective.
Okay, Deborah, anything to add on the comms?
Yeah, so we also used to have an internal intranet page. And so we would post communication there. We would also put it in our signatures, right, the deadline dates. And this is all coming from the accounts payable team. So we would do those things as well. And then we knew which departments, right, that were not necessarily our problem child, but maybe they had larger volumes. And so we would meet with them to identify early on, to identify any concerns they were having going into the end of the year. So we weren't surprised with extra large volumes. We would also communicate directly then during those meetings, the deadline dates. And so we really worked with those departments that we knew that needed that extra care, so that when we went into year end, we were all on the same page.
Thanks very much. And is it just a question from me, because it's the year end, because it's a pressured time of year in all sorts of ways, is it quite difficult to review what went right and what went wrong when it's all over? Because presumably that's quite important as well.
So what I recommend is that, and I recommend this actually for year round, but definitely for year end, is anything that you had to make an exception for, and really hate that word exception. Anything that you know that went wrong, you document that, and then you follow up with the team afterwards, or the appropriate team member or the appropriate group or department, and just follow up with that afterwards. And if you're tracking something, typically whatever is tracked improves. And so if they know you're tracking that, then they'd be less apt to do that for the next, you know, mini year end. And then when you get to next year end. So I would say just make sure you track it and then follow up with those appropriate team members and or departments.
Okay.
Just to add as well, so we had a review as near year end as possible, but we also involved our auditors to look at the process, just to make sure that there was nothing that we hadn't done correct, or things had slipped through the net, so to speak, because the processes weren't correct or weren't in place. So audit have got quite an important role to play as well in the review process.
Okay, thanks very much. Well, let's move on to, that's what you need to plan. How do you keep the plan on track? And what can you do if things maybe go wrong? Garry, perhaps you'd like to kick us off on this. Yeah,
I'll just touch again on what I said earlier, that we had a month-end close, so we were able to keep an eye on how things were progressing month on month, and we had senior accountants and accountants assigned to each directorate, so they were working basically every month, looking at how the spend was going through the various directorates. But if you take it down a level to accounts payable, I think the visibility of where the invoices are across the organization was really, really important to us, because as you approach year end, the pressure is on to obviously get your invoices paid, get as many paid as possible. Our target was to have 0 within our workloads by the time the cutoff came. There will be invoices out in the organization that have not been authorized for whatever reason, but we did our best to get what we could get cleared, and also focus on maybe high value invoices that were sitting still waiting to be paid. Anything over 5,000, we really pushed to get those sorted before the year end close, because the last thing you want is for those high value invoices to be committed in the current financial year, but have to be spent out of the new financial year. And then you've got the accountancy team having to do accruals. So that was really, really important that we were able to see where the invoices were. And the last sort of 3 to 4 weeks, we literally reported daily on the volume of invoices we had outstanding, the value, and where the large volume value invoices were sitting across the organization. And the accountancy team would help us to try and push to get those paid as well. So regular reviews were definitely key, and the visibility of your invoices within your AP setup was really, really important. And also what I mentioned earlier as well about trying to reduce the procurement spend over the last 6 to 8 weeks so that your invoice volumes would reduce too.
Okay.
So that was quite important.
Thanks. Deborah, what would you say were your 3 essentials for keeping that important plan on track?
Well, I kind of want to focus on, what if things go wrong? And
Okay.
in that focus, I really want to talk about fraud, right? Because fraud for the holidays is like, really trending higher, because the fraudsters or cyber criminals, they know that, year end has increased workload. They know that we're more distracted. They know that we're working harder. And so they're trying to get not only your consumer dollars, but also fraudulent payments by diverting your vendors' legitimate payments. And so I would say you need to have some type of a plan in place so that if you do make a fraudulent payment, everybody knows what to do. And so what that means is you need to create a contact list. So internal contacts, your bank, your vendor's bank, the local FBI office, the police, Interpol, depending on where you are. So make that contact list of who needs to be contacted if a payment is made. And then assign staff, make sure that the staff knows what their duties are, what their role is in this plan if a fraudulent payment is made, and make sure that they have authorized access to perform whatever duties they are assigned. And then lastly, review this. Once you get this plan in place, review it on a monthly basis. I know that year end is big. The holidays are big for fraudsters, but it's really any time of the year. It's been increasing since COVID, and it really hasn't stopped. And so make sure that you review that, your plan on a monthly basis to make sure you're keeping everything up to date. But it's just like that first question we asked about what to do for year end. If things go wrong, you need to plan in advance for that. And fraud is a big one that the cyber criminals are trying to get you to do wrong this year.
Okay, thanks. Caroline, would you like to come in?
Yep. So assuming I'm having my team meeting on a Monday and talking about my year-end plan on a Monday, on a Friday, we would go back out to the business, first of all, checking where we were, checking if there was an issue, checking if people needed help, giving people an update on, let's say there were 50 invoices in there with no goods receipt note. We would go to the areas and ask if there was a problem, certainly if it was material value or if it was starting to age. So pre-COVID, lots and lots of phone calls rather than emails, because emails are impersonal and can easily just be left and not even read. So much easier to make the phone call. That would be the first thing. And when I say become a bit of a nag, it's said nicely, but it's because it's reiterating how important it is and that they've got a job to do and they need to help you achieve the company year-end position as well. And then secondly, expecting things to go wrong. Look, everybody makes mistakes. No one's infallible. And I think you have to prepare, that someone is going to make an error. But the key thing for me was always to say to people, it's not a witch hunt. We want to know as soon as possible. That gives us the best opportunity of putting it right. And I'm not talking about fraud now, like Debra's talking about. It could be putting a journal posting through incorrectly. It could be keying an invoice in, adding zeros on, or whatever the issue is. It's about communicating quickly and then giving the chance to put it right. And most, I would say 9 times out of 10, you can correct that error in the correct timelines. And if not, you've probably got to talk to management accounts or commercial finance teams to get them to do the super user journal for you. But nothing should be that much of a problem that you can't fix an error. And then I think thirdly, it's about don't getting stressed about having to chase people as well, because it's part of the job. People expect you to do it. Sometimes they wait for you to do it, and you know, that's part of the AP function. So keeping the plan on track, it is still about chasing for responses, checking and checking again. And another thing that I do as well, I'm sorry, that's 4 tips, not 3, is assume that that everyone knows what they're doing. We should never assume that. I always ask if people understand, and never be afraid to ask a question, because that's the way that we all learn. Yeah, so I never feel embarrassed. If I don't know something, I'll just say, sorry, can you just explain that to me? And that's fine as well. So that's me.
Thanks very much indeed, all of you. Let's move on now, maybe starting with Debra, to some of the key financial considerations and the compliance issues. Now, obviously, there are details that are different, UK, USA, different parts of the world, but some things are specific and some things are general. Debra, the compliance issues.
Yeah, and so with compliance, really, you know, we are going into that tax reporting season. And so for the US entities, the first thing is, you know, if you have a vendor that is not in the US, then you are collecting an IRS, the applicable W-8 forms. Well, those forms expire 12/31, and it's the 3rd year after the signature date. And so 12/31 of this year, all of your W-8s that are signed and dated for 2018, at any time in 2018, you need to start, you need to collect those for 12/31. So if you haven't already started doing that, that needs to start happening now. And the IRS just published new versions of the W-8 forms as of October 2021. Those forms, however, are not required to be collected until April 30th of 2022. But if you have vendors, foreign vendors, where their W-8s are expiring 12/31, you're going to send them a form, the applicable form anyway. So just send them the updated version, the October 2021 version. So that's for your foreign payees. Now for your US and foreign payees, or domestic and foreign payees, you're coming into 1099 and 1042 reporting season in January. That starts off that tax reporting or season process for accounts payable. And so the best thing that you can do, and I know we're busy with trying to get invoices posted, but start to look at cleaning your vendor data, right? So if you clean your vendor data and make sure that your legal name and tax ID combination is valid with the IRS, you're going to save your company potential penalties, and you're also going to save your AP team for the manual process of the B notices that you have to send out if the IRS notifies you and lets you know that you have filed incorrect legal name and tax ID combination. So really, this is December kind of starts off that process of collecting those W-8s and the whole tax reporting season. So it's an important month. In addition to making sure you get your invoices posted, there's a tax reporting compliance piece that starts now as well.
Thanks very much, Debra. Garry, Caroline, anything that you want to add about compliance at end of year?
Yeah. We always try and get the reporting prepared well ahead of the deadlines, and by that I mean we create a folder for half year and year end reporting, and then we file all our reports and reconciliations in the one folder, and then it's easy to come back to and easy to find. One of the things that we do is prepare the AP tracks So to look at tracks, year-on-year comparisons, to be able to explain the movement in those tracks for the auditors, both internal and external, and any of the other legally compliant reports that we have to run. And one of the things I want to talk about, just touch on quickly, is payment practice reporting, because in the UK, if you're a business and you trigger, I think it's employee, don't quote me on this, but employees over 250, X amount of turnover, you can Google it and look. You have to publish your payment practice reporting twice a year, and that's within 28 days of the year end and half year closing of the books. So it's important to look at that throughout the year, and to track where you are on your payment practices, and for your CFO or finance director, be able to explain where you are in average payment terms, payments late, more importantly, and the other criteria that you have to publish on. And we used to look at it on a monthly basis, and that way it's best practice. You can see what's going on with your payments when they go wrong and do something about it. And not forgetting that competitors will look on the government website to see how you are doing compared to your competitors, and then choose who they want to work with. And the other quick other tip is we used to schedule our reports, so they were always scheduled out of hours. If they were large reports like unmatched invoices at year end or unmatched goods received notes, we always scheduled them so that they didn't impact on the workloads during the working day, or more importantly, impact on how the system was performing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Caroline. Garry, anything to add?
Well, within local authority, we had a lot of statutory and legislative requirements and dates that we had to meet. And one of the key things for us, which didn't help as you're approaching year end, is that every local authority, if I take Scotland, for example, had to deliver a balanced budget. And that balanced budget had to be delivered within a set period of a date range. So you're talking about the end of February, basically. So every local authority is working towards getting a balanced budget. Now you're balancing that budget before you've actually closed off your year end. So you really have to make sure that there's going to be absolutely no surprises in there. If you're going to be saying education is going to get X amount this year, social work's going to get X amount, and then you've got something thrown in there that you weren't expecting. So that was one of the key things that we had to also deal with, apart from year end, was actually setting the budget for the future year. And obviously what we've already touched on, it's just making sure that all your tax returns are correct, that you've paid the correct tax for your staff, that they're going to get the correct employee tax information out, such as a P60. Your construction industry tax scheme, all of that has been paid appropriately. And again, you've got dates in which you need to meet to deliver that information to HMRC here in the UK.
Okay. Well, thank you all. That's been a sort of a 35-minute rush through all the things everybody should be looking at for their plans. They're keeping their end of year ducks in order. One of the really perhaps most difficult things, and we're going to have a little poll now and then ask you for your ideas. What keeps you motivated during year end? Now, we've got a few choices for you. So what keeps you motivated during year end? And you can choose as many as you like. Good communication, encouragement from others, a good plan, pizza or other food bought in, snacks, chocolate, reward at the end, or other. I'm not quite sure how we're going to find out what the other is, but we can probably imagine that it might be a pint at the end of the day or something like that. But what would you choose? Good communication, encouragement from others, a good plan, pizza or other food bought in for the team, snacks just to keep you going, chocolate, separate to snacks evidently, rewards at the end, or something else. And we'll all imagine what the something else might be. Let's have a look. So far more sensible. Good communication, everybody's there, and encouragement from others between teams, I'm guessing, or to your staff. Nobody wants the pizza. A few snacks will keep people going. Rewards at the end, and a little bit a small percentage of something else that we can all use our imaginations on. Great, thanks for that. So to be serious about this, that really clearly is a big thing at the end of the year. So how do you keep your team motivated? What would your top tips be, and who'd like to come in first?
I'll start with that only because no one voted for pizza or other food brought in. And that's what we used to do. So we did have to work some Saturdays. And so if staff came in the office on Saturdays, we would always bring in food. I thought that made them happy, but maybe not. But the other thing I would say, especially as we're, still dealing with this pandemic, is to definitely be flexible. I was actually recently at a conference, accounts payable conference, and one of the big things that some of the AP managers said there was that they were having a difficult time, recruiting accounts payable employees and morale as well, but specifically under the recruiting, because they said, right, that they're competing now with, due to the labor shortage, they're competing now with wages that are, on par or better than their current accounts payable wages, and right, again, about making sure you keep the employee morale up, and being flexible is really kind of the key to both, right? I think we've all seen in the past 18 months or so that accounts payable doesn't necessarily need to be in the office to be productive. I know many may be working back in the office or working a hybrid schedule right now, but I think it's important as we go to the year end, as people are feeling different types of pressure due to the holidays and just other things going on in the world, to make sure that we talk to our employees and that we are flexible with them in order to make sure that they don't get overwhelmed and burned out over the holiday period, because we know it's increased in our professional lives and accounts payable, but it's also an increase in stress and pressure due to the holidays.
Yeah, thanks, Deborah. Caroline, what would you think would keep morale up in your experience?
I saw there was 0 chocolate takers as well, and I'm struggling. I could understand gin, but 0 chocolate takers, no, absolutely no. Certainly not in my old team anyway. I think, one of the things that we used to do was make sure that we rewarded outstanding contributions. So if someone really, really stepped up and did something exceptional, we would reward them. And when I say reward, we used to have a little tuck shop, and any monies that we made from the tuck shop, we used to use it to purchase small gifts for the team, whether it was a bottle of wine, a box of chocolates, or I don't know, just a voucher for a local shop. And that's what we use to reward the team, but not forgetting the simple things in life by saying thank you for a job well done, or if they've been nominated by someone in the business or mentioned for doing a good job, making sure that that was always passed on and they knew about it. I like to think that everyone in the team has got the opportunity to get noticed, not those that are just in front of customers or suppliers, but it applies to everyone in payables. And it's just about, the simple things in life, really.
Yeah, but consideration, flexibility and appreciation. I mean, Deborah and Caroline, you've both talked about that. Do you think that's harder as people are working more virtually at home? I mean, it's tougher to, say thanks or drop something off to them, isn't it?
Yeah, I actually introduced home working well before COVID, because we had a number of staff that had demands with families, and so I felt that there was an opportunity to trial it within the team. So we had them working at home either 2 or 3 days a week, in the office for 2 days. So they still had that contact. And again, the communication is really, really important. They need to be made to feel that they're still part of a team. And it worked. There was some staff that didn't want to do it, and that was fine. So they came into the office, but there were others that worked well for them. It didn't bother me if they wanted to work from midnight till 7 in the morning, as long as they got their volume of invoices processed at the end of the day. That was fine. But I think that, you know, the thank you, it doesn't cost anything to say thank you. And we were always very grateful to the efforts. I had a good team, but our motivation was always at the end of the year to try and get our workload to zero. That was when it was our cutoff, try and get all our invoices to zero. And once we did that, we just went out and got drunk. We had a night out.
Well, that's where the gin comes in, Garry.
Win together and win together. That's my stage.
Thanks. Just before we wrap up, is there one thing from the whole of the things that we've been talking about, one thing that a manager can do to make year end work better? One each. Caroline, your one thing.
Yeah, mine is to lead and be available for everybody.
Keep your eye on the ball is my one.
Okay, and Debra.
Yeah, and again, going back to being flexible, listen to your team members and be flexible in finding a resolution that fits.
Thanks very much, everybody. So thanks to our panel of experts, Caroline Adams, Debra Richardson and Garry Stevens, and thanks to you two for joining us. A very quick feedback survey will pop up for you at the end of this session. Please do take part. And for more information on membership and courses, please head to the IFOL website. This webinar will be available on demand on the IFOL website from tomorrow, so please share with any colleagues or friends, and we'll send a link to top suggestions and a guide to year end. So thanks again for joining us, and in case I don't see you, have a happy Christmas, happy year end in all sorts of ways. Thanks very much indeed. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.